Good morning. It's 9 a.m., Monday, March 21st, 2022. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Motion by Jeff, second by Nathan. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion of possible action to approve claims dated March 21, 2022 in the amount of $502,605.07.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is items with County Engineer Keith White. Morning, Keith.
Good morning.
First up is discussion of possible action to approve various utility permits.
We have two this morning. One is from Liberty Communications of West Liberty, Iowa. And they're wanting to install underground fiber optic on multiple roads. 100th Street from House 427 East Evans, 100th Street from Dean west of the Cedar County line, Dean from Highway 6 north to the Cedar County line, Atwood from Highway 6 south to 4847, and Burkett from Highway 6 north to House 1049, and Bancroft from Highway 6 north to the Cedar County line. And the second is from Lumen, formerly CenturyLink of West Des Moines, Iowa. And they are relocating a telecommunication cable on Vale near one of our Culvert 2022 projects. So that's what we have.
I'll move their approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion of possible action to set a letting date for L-GO-3-73-70, a triple 12-foot by 8-foot by 48-foot RCB on Holly Avenue, and for L-WI-4-73-70, a triple 10-foot by 6-foot by 48-foot RCB on 150th Street.
Yeah, those are the ones I had circulated the title sheets for. Two triple box culvert projects that Alex designed, and we did get the Corps of Engineers permits for. So they're ready to go to letting, so.
I'll move the approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff.
We need to set a date.
Oh, I move whatever Jeff moved. Or second.
When you want, when's the next letting?
Well, it's a local letting, give me a second here. If they'll give you a date, obviously, but more than likely about a month off. April 25th is the date we were proposing, 9 a.m., April 25th.
So I'll make the motion, we set the letting for April 25th at 9 AM.
And I'll second that motion.
I've got a motion by Jeff, a second by Nathan.
Keith, on those reinforced box culverts that you're talking about, is this
Yeah.
for the contractor to actually just install that, or do they actually fabricate these box culverts?
Build it,
They build it and then they actually install it then?
well, they form it up and pour it
Okay,
in place.
okay. That's what I was getting at.
I mean, and there are no prefabricated triples. out
That's
there.
what I wasn't sure on, because it doesn't have a drawing on it, and that's why I wasn't sure how those were fabricated, or if they're just built in, formed, and then,
Do you want me to
no,
bring the
no,
plans?
I guess that was just that size I just had never heard of when you talked about it. I
Triple is a
thought-
custom.
Okay.
I said as long as we can get our core permits, we like those, you know, there's a floor and the bottom of the stream does not degrade like it does under a bridge, and should get a lot more life out of them.
Okay.
What, and that, I'm just thinking forward here, what's your guess on when this work would be done? Can you even make a guess? Okay,
Today's day and age,
you just don't know.
right, and I'll speak to that just a hair when I do the project update.
Okay. Well, I've got a motion and a second on this. Any more questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Next would be project updates.
Yeah, and really the only thing that's going on out there is 171st and DeLong dropped the trees, as I mentioned before, and moved some pavement, tore some fence out. Schroeder moved in a crane and some other equipment, and we look for them to maybe start pouring some concrete this week. That's a single box. And our York Avenue Bridge, which was last year, and I had mentioned, and that's Schroeder also, the prime on that, and said they're not coming until late this fall. They plan to burn some working days. The DOT offers up so many anymore, so that's you just never know. And in today's market, you just don't know when they're gonna come. I'm gonna say could be this coming fall, could end up being next year on these ones that we just discussed. That's about all that's new on projects.
Okay. Anything other?
I had a couple items for other. The first, the DOT's been speaking more about the funding situation. I had printed the email they sent. Normally, we do our 5-year program just as soon as you pass the county budget. I mean, we like to get it done, get it in. The DOT's normally saying get it in earlier, cause they got 99 of them to review. So we got a memo from them this week, saying basically, please don't do your if possible, delay your programs. I mean, we'll still turn it on in time until they get totally sorted out on the federal aid stuff. They've said they think they can only afford to swap 50 million annually, and it's not in stone, but it's pretty close. What they've decided is they're gonna swap with cities and not with counties, because counties are probably, we're not talking about the big cities. Counties are generally better equipped to manage the federal aid projects, and most of the smaller cities just don't have the staff to do it. So that's the logic that's going on there. What it still means, anything we would have in the pipe right now for swap will get swapped. If F-58 old 6 gets slapped before the end of the year, it'll still be swap. But going forward after that, those regional approved projects will probably go back to federal aid and be back to the 80-20 maximum. They are planning to hopefully have enough dollars. We have in here so much, you see our BROS. The OS is off system, it's not on the federal aid system. The on system, you rarely see a BRS here, which is on the system, but they're hoping to be able to swap those. It's all a maybe, but they're really, if this was the military, they'd be saying stand by to stand by on the funding, so. That's what it looks like. It really looks like swap is mostly going to be a history for the counties. And then the other thing, we got an email, Friday from Pam Green down on 245th, and I really hadn't had the opportunity to forward it to you, but expressing concerns about the bridge and the road on 245th down to Edgewater, so I will forward that on.
I think I received
got
it. I
that.
think
We got-
I got
yeah.
a copy.
Oh, you guys, okay.
I don't know if it was the same one, but assume so.
Well, on ours, it only shows us, but maybe you got, and it was addressed to, Muscatine County Supervisor, so it's probably just a copy of us of the same thing then. Okay. That's all I got.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you, Keith. Next is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the March 14, 2022 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Santos, second by Nathan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, Jeff got that, I'm sorry.
Aye. It's okay.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Correspondence, Jeff?
I had, two emails on 245th, one from Mr. Storm and one from Ms. Green.
That everything?
Yep.
Nathan?
It's the same.
And I had the same. Santos?
Had the same thing in regards to 245th Street. I think the one thing that jumped out at me was the concern about the Class A and Class B roads on Mr. Storm's email. So I had an email on work for upcoming work that they're going to be doing possibly this week with the geothermal with Oscar and his team. So they're just going in to do some load testing. So it's not anything major. Also got an email from the city in regards to their schedule. It looks like they're looking at possibly this July to start looking at starting that housing study and going out for RFPs. So I did email Jody on some follow-up questions. I haven't got that, so we'll hear some more of that coming up. And then I had a call that I reached out to Eric on trash and debris over off of Pettibone. I think it's been a call that we had a couple years back in regards to business out there that has had a lot of plastic that looks like it's going into the side of the roads and across the road. So I think I offered some suggestions and believe Eric is following up on that. That's all I have.
Okay, Doug?
I had the 245th Street emails, and that's all I had.
Okay. Any committees, Doug?
Thursday, the 17th, at 8 o'clock, we had our fair board meeting and talked about our work schedule for the Eastern Iowa auction that's this coming Saturday, the 26th. It starts at 8:30. Large items are selling live online starting at 10:30. There's a lot of equipment there, so I know the weather's not gonna be the greatest, but we're hoping for a good crowd.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of equipment?
Farm equipment.
Sure.
Okay, is that everything, Doug?
Yeah.
Santos?
I didn't have any.
I had Riverbend Transit on Wednesday the 16th, and that's all I had. Nathan?
On the 15th, the Ides of March, we had the Veterans Affairs Commission. We primarily just met to discuss how to go about finding Jen Watkins' replacement.
Okay, is that everything? Jeff?
That's it.
On the 14th, the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region, we had a special budget session. And on the 17th, I had the State Mental Health and Disability Services Commission meeting.
Okay, very good. Next is items with the administration office. First up is discussion and possible action to appoint Wayne Schultz to fill a vacancy on the Muscatine County Historic Preservation Commission for a term ending January 1st, 2023.
I'll move for the approval.
Second it.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I thank Wayne for his willingness to serve.
Absolutely.
It'd be a good asset for that team.
Yep.
Okay. Next is discussion and possible action authorizing the chair to sign a letter to the state auditor's office.
This letter, this draft letter was in your packet. It was suggestion from Jeff following our exit conferences with the state auditor.
I think that we all had our exit conferences, and I think everybody understood the staff's displeasure with the process that's been implemented in the last year. Lack of hands-on, and I don't know how you do an audit without visiting site and looking at the actual paperwork. And so I think we need to let the auditor know that we're not happy with the services. It's been a 25-year relationship, but things are changing, and I don't know why.
Well, I can't imagine that, that it was any different, that the audit was any different for any of the other counties that, participated as such, and I would think that they would, probably not be overly thrilled with how theirs went either.
Yeah.
If it was done the same way.
One of the things that we had discussed too, Nancy, was looking at potentially, going out for another RFP or going outsourcing. I know the city does that outside of as well as audits, but
Yep.
I think we could even share that is something that we're looking at because we're not
I
getting
think
good
it
service.
indicated at the end of the letter.
Yeah, it's
So
in
we
there.
will go out for an RFP next year. We haven't done it in a number of years, probably in the 10 years I've been on the board, or 12 years, that we have not done it, because in the past, the state auditor's office has been a significantly lower cost, but they also did a good job. But, that's changing a little bit, so.
Yep, I just wanna clarify those.
Yeah, then, if you don't, have some correspondence to state your position on it, the other party never knows any difference.
Right.
Right.
So,
So
did
Doug
you
made a
make
motion, I'll second it.
motion by Doug, second by Santos, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next is review and possible action to approve an updated class specification and process/timeline for replacing the retiring county engineer.
So there really wasn't any significant changes to the class specification. It was just kind of clean up, to put it in the format of the rest of our, job descriptions in the county. And then the tentative timeline, I think Keith's opinion on it is that maybe this is a bit too aggressive in terms of the timeline. But by the time we had a chance to talk about it, it was late Friday, so, I figured I'd bring this to you guys and have you give me some direction if you want any changes to it.
Well, I think we're gonna have to just see how quickly it moves on its own, because the timeline is somewhat of more of a speculation than anything.
Absolutely.
So, and you have to start somewhere, but, yeah, it does seem fairly quick, but who knows, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that if we can at least start the process, and then if we need to adjust those dates depending on how many people apply, how many people come in, and then obviously if there's any interest possibly internally within the team now, maybe those windows could be met on schedule, so.
Sure.
And then the other piece that was talked about was pay for the position. And that is something that we're still working on. When trying to do benchmarking, I found that, there was a lot of the data that I couldn't have access to, so, Keith did some legwork there, gathering some information, and we're gonna meet about it after the meeting today, so by next Monday, I should have something for you in terms of, pay for the position.
So wouldn't we still have that adjustable due to pay per experience too? I mean, wouldn't that also be something as a?
Absolutely. What Jeff had expressed an interest in, right now, the position is just a contracted position. It has been since we hired Keith. Jeff had suggested taking a look at putting it into our putting it into our salary administration program, which means it would be in a grade, and there would be steps within that grade, and there'd be some clear, path in terms of progressing along that.
Levels they can reach
Yeah.
to.
And so, in order for me to work through that process, I need benchmarking information about what others are being paid out there, and like I said, Keith gathered a lot of that, because he could have access to stuff that wouldn't necessarily, and we're gonna deal with that today, and I'll have a recommendation for you next week.
I think the other thing that the board would need to be prepared to discuss and think about in my conversations with, why does cause this is, I think Nancy is the only position within the county that's a contracted employee, correct?
Yes,
And I always wonder, why is it different? Why are we treating this individual position differently? And so there's a number of things that come up in that discussion about, in the current engineer's example, hadn't had to make a pretty significant move of family and household to get here, and that was all on their dime. And so there was a contract, and those contractors, talk about severability and compensation if they don't, you don't go beyond X number of years and all that kind of stuff. So I think the board would wanna have those conversations if we do that, if we have a residency requirement, are we also offering moving packages? I'm a big proponent of putting into a salary administration, grade it like we do the rest of our professional staffs, have it documented out there rather than be a negotiated contract every year. I think Dave Watkins, had originally changed the contract. It was an annual, and then I think they went to kind of perpetual renewal like they do with some school superintendents a number of years back. And I think that was a good thing to take some of the administrative burden out of it. But I just think it's best to put it into the salary administration program. Treat it like all other positions and be fair and appropriate with it.
I wasn't aware that it wasn't. I did not know that. So yeah, that definitely I think would add value to it. I think that if we do have, a starting salary, obviously would be a good positive for somebody when they see that. So I think once you know what that is, and then we obviously go from, up to what level we pay for
Range,
experience,
yeah.
because we're gonna be pulling from somebody. Highly doubt we're gonna just grab somebody right. And if we pull them from some area, they probably need to have some sort of entry desire or know, and what that potential is, so. Okay.
All right. Well, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
And so Nancy, just to clarify, you and Keith probably get together early this week, so you'll have grade and. Are we thinking we're gonna move it into salary administration? We think that's rather than a contracted position?
So I would rather see it that way, but I know that, I don't know how that's gonna affect our budget, because I don't know if we've already figured that. So I don't know if we need to make an amendment for that. And two, I would be open to it if we, I think it would be more attractive for somebody, because then you're gonna have the same benefits, the same packages, and that would obviously interest more. But I don't know if that needs to be an amendment. I don't know if Sherry's here or not.
we won't need to do an amendment for that. We will have potentially, a tiny bit of a tiny bit of overlap this fiscal year. Most of the overlap we would have
And next
in terms of the new engineer and still having Keith here would happen, next year.
So I would like to see it, incorporated into our administration. How does that actually need to happen? Do we need to make a resolution here, or make a change eventually in the contracts? I don't know what that needs to be.
Then I would wanna see, we would wanna see what the grade recommendations would be, salary and grade recommendations. I think I would wanna have a conversation with the current engineer to find out, okay, so I understand historically some counties have done this, some have not. I would want to understand the reasoning, why it is done, so that as we go through it, we make sure we address that in our salary administration program, if there's issues or concerns about that. Just to make sure that we've got all of our bases covered, because what I don't wanna do is restrict our ability to recruit for qualified candidates.
And so the plan at this point would be to come back to you next week, ready to have those discussions.
And I believe, and then and I think even in I read the job description, I don't recall it that closely, but I'm pretty sure that, this is required that it's a PE, a licensed PE and
Yes.
all of that, yeah, so there are significant restrictions And we are, by code, we have to employ a licensed
Yeah, it has to be a
engineer.
PE, yeah.
So, you know, we just wanna make sure that's all spelled out in our administration program and, okay, good.
Okay. Well, I've got a motion by Santos and a second by Nathan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Anything other, Nancy?
I don't have anything else.
I do have. Nancy, I think it was a couple weeks back, I think Scott had requested a discussion with Eric in regards to the, sprinkler systems, was that what it was, the fire? That we were asking for him to come up, and I don't know if that was something that we had pushed off for later. Do you remember we had that discussion a couple weeks back?
We had a discussion, I think, one of the things I think that has, maybe and Eric can discuss when, we could ask him a bit, but there are some pending legislation right now as it relates to, zoning, is that not correct, Eric? Maybe you could.
And the only reason why I say it is because we said we're gonna do it the very next week, and I
Yeah.
think I asked to be like 3 weeks out. So I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, it's about 3 weeks now, and I still haven't heard nothing about
Yeah.
it. And I didn't know there was pending
Yeah.
legislation on that.
Well, in addition to, some pending legislation in Des Moines that proposes a state building code, separate from what is called the state building code now, which applies to state-owned buildings, state-funded buildings. There is legislation that would lay out minimum code standards and even, I think, some fee structures. There's a lot of vigorous debate going back and forth with this bill, because it includes a lot of other topics as well, some zoning stuff, I think some veteran stuff. I had Jim look at it. It's nowhere near settled.
Okay.
I'll say that much, but there's that. I also did find out that, while we do have the ability to modify, amend, adopt almost any of our codes, with a few exceptions when it comes to energy efficiency, electrical and plumbing, there still is state mandated codes. So if we would choose to completely do away with building codes in Muscatine County, any commercial building is still subject to certain standards in industrial building, whether we enforce it or the state fire marshal enforces it. So sprinklering of certain types of buildings, if it's required under the state fire code or the international building code, both of which are adopted by the state, it's mandatory to meet those thresholds. So,
And I wasn't trying to get into I just wanted to know if we forgot about it or if we were pushing it off.
No, I think I'd spoken a little bit with Eric after I'd seen the legislation and some of the other issues, because there's some other, I'm trying to remember, I'll go back in my notes, but there are a lot of things kinda up in the air, and some of the other is that, this might be an effort that we need to talk with our state legislators about, because, in my mind, we're blindly adopting international codes as a state, and we aren't maybe fully vetting what we're signing up for. And I think that we need to have an informed decision about that, whether we really believe that or not, I think Scott and I have talked about, fire code, right? So the state fire marshal's office is gonna say, and I'm not sure who elected them, it wasn't me, the state fire marshal, I'm not sure how they get the decision to mandate what's done in every municipality in the state and everywhere in the state. And, if you think about, industrial properties or commercial properties that would require fire sprinkler systems, many places we don't have adequate water supply, you're on wells. So, how are you gonna do that? What's the practicality of it? I think it goes on to my whole point is I think that's a business decision, not necessarily a government decision. So I think we have some things to work out and see what kind of latitude we have in those areas. And I think maybe we need to start talking to our legislatures, because it sounds like the state's talking about it too.
Yeah, and I wasn't aware of that, Eric. I didn't mean to pull you on the spot there, but it was just more me wanting to understand something that I knew was brought up a couple weeks back, and I just wanted to follow up on it.
no, I think that's why I really hadn't come back to you. I knew that you had asked some questions, but I talked to a couple of you that, hey, there's this pending state legislation. Hopefully we'll know where this fleshes out. That may make the whole discussion a moot point or not. We can certainly have conversations down the road, but it did clarify that it looks like there's some state mandated codes that trump regardless of what we do.
Okay.
So,
If I remember correctly from some information that you sent me, Jim, there's a difference between state code and statewide code.
Right.
And that's the, that's really the answer to this question on what has to be followed. So, that's the real, that's the real,
That doesn't
issue.
even make sense. Like, what do you mean
What's that?
state code versus statewide code?
State,
How does
state,
that make any
state code,
sense?
right, state building code right now, my understanding, and it is, I mean, I had to have Jim look at some of it. It talks about, applying to state-owned buildings, state-funded buildings, you know, constructed with state grants and things. But then there is statewide code, things that are minimum design and construction standards, regardless of whether you have a building, permitting and inspection program in your local jurisdiction or not.
Yeah, the more you get into it, the more confusing it gets with the verbiage.
Okay, well,
And I can't really tell you where this bill's gonna come down. It's, like I said, there's a lot of vigorous debate right now, on it, cause it covers a number of topics, so.
Okay,
all right, thank you.
clarification on that, gentlemen. Next is, receive information from county employees. Do we have any county employees that wish to address the board on any issue? Seeing none. Next is receive comments from the public. Do we have anyone in the public that would like to address the board? Step to the podium, state your name, please, and your address.
Good morning, name's Danny Chick. Got a couple items I want to discuss with the board. There's been a lot of talk by some of the board members about, you know, how well you guys have done on lowering the percent of taxes the last couple of years because of our lower budget. I don't know if you're aware, but everybody got their new assessments for their property assessments on last Thursday or Friday. And everybody, I mean, social media locally blew up, going crazy on the county taxes and the city council, and on the city taxes. And although it may be true, the last 2 years, we lowered the percentage per thousand, the dollar amount per thousand. Everybody, it seems like across the board out there is getting their taxes raised anywhere from 10 to 25%. I know the assessor's office goes through a process every 1 to 3 years, but my personal situation, my taxes were, my assessed value was at 165,000. It got increased to 201,000. So I paid $13.44 per thousand on that 165. To remain at that rate, I'm gonna get a yearly increase of $483. My new assessed value went from 165 to 201. My new yearly tax rate went from 2218 to 2701. So, and this is seen across the board for everybody, and the research I did, and you guys can correct me if you have any different information, taxes are based on two factors: the assessed value of the property and the total local tax rate. The final tax rate is the result of the budgets established to provide services, which the county board provides that budget. So if everybody across the county is gonna see a 10 to 25% increase on their taxes, and that has to do with the budget that you guys established, I think you owe it to the community, the people in the county, to give an explanation to why that, I mean, inflation's going through the roof, gas is going through the roof. This is gonna be a major impact, and especially to, older folks on social security, like my mother-in-law that lives next door, that's also seen a 20% increase. This is a big increase to family and throughout the county, and I think they deserve an explanation to why.
Danny, I'm glad you're here today, because I got the same envelopes, and I opened mine up, and I can assure you, I keep pretty close eye on my stuff, and I can assure you that, I believe the assessor's office is probably gonna be pretty busy, moving forward here this spring. And, matter of fact, I have 2 parcels that I haven't received the, assessed value of yet, but I have all the rest of my parcels came on Friday. And mine personally have an increase of from 4% to 32%. Myself personally. Now, I have, a residential dwelling, I've got commercial properties, I've got ag properties, so I've got a wide spectrum of the board. And, yeah, I'm, myself personally, I'm, can't wait to have some time to talk with Randy on this, so I understand the reasons for this, because there's gonna be different reasons that they have moved at whatever level they've moved to, why some are at 4 and why some are at 23, some are at 32, so, I'm glad you brought that up today.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big impact on families, and I don't know what caused it. I know that from my research, every 1 to 3 years, 2 to 3 years, the assessor's office does a new value. I know home values have been going through the roof the last few years. That probably weighed an impact on it, but, you know, like I said, the budget apparently has a big impact on that. So, I don't know if the budget, I don't know how we can have a fiscally responsible budget and then need the money to raise, it's gotta be in the hundreds of, maybe millions of dollars in increases across the county.
Well, Danny, if you want to come take a look at this, this is the schedule of tax and levy rates. Remember, the budgets are levied, or the taxes are levied a year and a half in reverse. So last, or the FY 22-23 that we approved is about 17.5 million in total taxes we collect.
The county.
Right, the county, from the county areas. And it was 19 million last year, and so we're down about $1.5 million in terms of what we levied from last year, or countywide. And then within the cities, we're down roughly the same amount, 1.5 million. So we have not levied this low since 2018. So I completely understand what you're saying, but it's not because our expenditures or our budget's going up. We are at the lowest rate in 5 years, and we cut about $1.5 million out of what we actually tax from both the county and the cities over the last year.
And I really appreciate you bringing that up, because another thing I think that people, and I encourage everyone, when you get your statement of taxes, look at that in detail, because there are numbers of levies on there. County is one. The county, everybody looks to the county for taxes because we collect all the taxes and remit them to other authorities, but your school board, your city, you know, depending on where you are, if you're not if you're a rural resident, so you don't have a city tax, but you'll have community college taxes, you have TB eradication, you have extension services, you have assessors offices, you have a number of other entities that are on your tax bill. And I think that it's important that we hold everybody accountable to the dollars. Absolutely.
Okay. My next item is something that's been bothering me a lot, is on the residency of the requirements for the county supervisors. I continue to, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything because I don't know where anybody lives, or I don't know how this process is being done, but I continue to hear rumors that past or current supervisors don't live in the district that they represent. And the new rumor I'm hearing the next couple of weeks, because a couple of you guys, because of the redistricting, would have been required to run against each other, that the possibility of getting if you win, and I've got all the rules on what you gotta do and where you gotta live, but if you win, that maybe somebody will rent an apartment or something in a district that they win in. And the rule on it is the Iowa resident at the time of the general election, registered voter, the county you have to be a registered voter in the county supervisor district when you're sworn in. Now, it doesn't say primary resident, but I just think that it's if anybody wants to come, now that you guys know I'm running for county supervisor, if anybody wants to come to my house, shall I win the election, you're gonna find that I live at the residence in the right district that I've lived in for 22 years. And you might be able to get around this in the rules, but I think it's shady, I think it's unethical, I think it's just not right, in my opinion, to not represent the district you live in and have a connection to that. I know the rules say you can live in it, and then for your primary residence, your residence of voting purposes is where your home is located. you can only have one voting address in the county. So I just continue to hear these rumors at the Republican meetings that I go to, and I have no reason to believe they're not accurate, and I don't think that it's fair, ethical, or morally right to do that. I think we ought to live in the counties that we represent, or the district, excuse me.
Well, I wanna comment on that, so. You're running obviously against me, which is fine, I appreciate that, but I live where I live at for the last 8 years. Not moved, it's where my mailing address is. And if you have any questions or concerns about that or other ones, I'm not moving, it's where I'm planning on still living at, so. Appreciate the request by the county attorney reaching out to me and wanting to know where I lived as well too. So I think you're right, they should live where they're supposed to live, but that's where I live and I do live in my district.
I appreciate that, but the new rumor is some other things, and I think it's wrong for anybody to do that. I think we ought to live where we're supposed to, is all I'm saying.
I think we all agree that we need to follow the law. Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Yep. Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to address the board? State your name and address, please.
My name is Chuck Hausman. My address is 2470 Edgewater Road, Conesville. With my better half, Sharon, she resides with me. And we've been here a couple of times already about the 245th Street and the bridge. I got this off of your county webpage about the responsibilities for that road. It's supposed to be maintained, it's supposed to have snow removal, it's supposed to have the ditches cleaned, and it's supposed to have the weeds removed from the edges of the road. If I was gonna use this as a scorecard, I'd give you a 3 on the weed removal and a 0 on all the rest. Now, we've lived down there for 30 years. That's been our residence full-time for 30 years. I've seen about every scenario that can be thrown at you where we live. Rivers flooding, ice jams, everything. And that road is in a state of repair now like we've never seen. Flooding is not the issue down there with the maintenance of that road. It's maintenance. It's not being done. Somebody's not doing their job. And as a group of landowners down there, we'd like to see some sort of a plan, a commitment to do something about it, a timeline to get that done, and then a plan to keep it maintained once it's done. I realize the bridge may be a bottleneck as far as getting equipment stuff across there that needs to be dealt with. It has been dealt with in the past, but it's just not been kept up with. It didn't flood down there last year. It hasn't flooded this year. It doesn't look like there's anything in the forecast for any flooding, so now's the time to be getting some work done on it, and that's what I'm asking is to see, make a motion, second it, let's have the engineer give us a plan and a timeline, and let's get on with it.
I do know that we had got the email from the county engineer that he was going out to start filling in some of the, major spots, and I think that was, he had
I
sent that out.
contacted the sheriff's department last Friday to ask them what their feelings were on if they had to respond to an emergency down there. And the deputy that called me back, he said he wouldn't drive a squad car down there. An ambulance probably wouldn't come down there, couldn't come down there.
I think one of the comments that we had got back was, obviously it was the moisture, we're wanting to try to, a lot of the roads now are just starting to get our thaw out to where we were at, and where we said, hey, we wanna make sure we're concerned about the spring thaw, look at where we're at, so we're wanting to go in and know when we're gonna start backfilling some of those roads, so.
And like I say, I've lived there 30 years, so I'm speaking from experience. The road was never a problem until we got a different operator on the maintainer. And they put somebody, and I'm not blaming that guy, he was stuck on there, he obviously had no experience, he's had little training, I assume. And he has made the road worse than what it was before. The ditches aren't being brought back up on the road, and so that the water can drain off the road. The road is the ditch. So that's what I'm asking. I wanna, we wanna see something done. We need a commitment from you folks. This is your job. It's a secondary road, and I did hear talk from the meeting last week about declassifying it to a Class B. And you're gonna have some resistance on that if that's attempted, so.
Chuck, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your address. What was it?
2470 Edgewater.
2470.
Edgewater is a Class B road. And it ought to be called a Class C, because basically the people that use that road have taken over the maintenance of that, and it's in not bad shape right now. If you drive down there, once you get down 245th Street, Edgewater Road is in fairly decent shape, because we have been maintaining it ourselves. So,
Chuck, do you guys down there on Edgewater, apply your own, material on that road? You haul any rock or slag? or
I
anything down there?
personally hauled 90 ton in there with my truck in 2018. And one of the other group brought a tractor down and helped spread it out. And we haul our own rock to our driveways and everything, so. I hauled it down there 5 ton at a time on a dump wagon, so I stayed under I had all my tickets, so if I'd have got stopped, I was legal crossing that bridge with the load.
Chuck, you say you live there year round. How many folks do you think live there year round down there?
Right now, you're looking at it right here, two of us.
Just you guys.
There are other people that are planning on moving back down there as a retirement home.
Do you know if that's a permitted use, the year-round living there?
Apparently it has, because we've been paying taxes on it all these years, and
How do we? Eric, are you familiar with that, or how does that work?
So I'd have to look at the individual properties, there's a number of them that have been permitted only as seasonal recreational.
Can you find
cottages.
that from Beacon?
Well,
Or-
they have individual parcels, if the construction date of the original structure predates, any of our zoning ordinances, they very well could be,
It's grandfathered in.
non-conforming uses if they've had.
And I've heard that term, and I know nobody likes that term, but I've heard that over the years that we were grandfathered in when we bought the place, so.
Well, you said 2470.
Yes,
So I'm not showing you as the owner of that. I'm not disputing it.
Sharon is,
Sharon. Okay, my bad. Sorry, Sharon. Okay. That makes way more sense. Obviously there's, we're hearing all kinds of different things, engineering department is telling us they put rock down there every couple of years and it gets sucked in, just sinks in the mud. And I was just taking a look before the meeting at what the taxes are. So $10,000 a mile is what I think we spend on a normal road. Is that about right, Keith? More or less?
Less than that.
County average is 6,300 a mile.
6,300. Okay. So the annual taxes generated by that whole parcel, and again, they're probably going to go up because of the change in valuation. But
oh yes,
right now,
34%.
all right, so say they go up 34%, you're looking at about $8,000 of taxation coming out. And that's not to say that folks don't live there. That's not to say that it's not a valuable and beautiful piece of land down there. The question is, and we're struggling with this. How do we divide up limited resources when we've got inflation? When the federal swap and everything is changing, so our dollars aren't going to go as far as they do. The taxes don't pay for the road.
Well, I'm sure in the whole county, there are other roads that
Sure there
have
are.
a surplus of tax money
Sure there are.
compared to the maintenance costs.
And that's why I'm trying to.
And
learn
that's
more.
why it all should,
Well, that's why I'm trying to learn more about how, because we have a lot of roads that serve relatively low valuation areas, and that's not a criticism of the property. Again, that's just a ratio. I think this board is going to have to make some hard decisions going forward as the values of our dollars shrink, as to what we can sustain. And you know, and that's one thing we're looking at. I know Matt and some other folks have said, well, why don't you guys make a decision? Why don't you do anything? We're trying to. We're trying to weigh these things and figure out the fairest possible way to serve the most amount of people and the best amount of good. And I certainly appreciate your input. And I know that, you know, a lot of you have had property there for a really long time. And, you know, that's a real difficult situation we find ourselves in. So we appreciate your input. I've been watching the video that Matt has sent us. It doesn't look good. It does not.
Well, I heard a comment made in this meeting last week that Keith heard from a former landowner down there that he didn't think it was worth spending a nickel on.
Okay.
Fine, he's entitled to his opinion, but if he's a former landowner, he doesn't have any skin in the game, so why do we even care?
Well,
I don't wanna-
I think everybody who pays taxes in this county's got some skin in the game, you know, and we've got to act like that. So, Keith, did you want to? I mean, I know you talked about we haven't just ignored what you said in terms of has maintenance been done on this. You know, Keith has told us about how many. What did you say? How many tons of rock down there a couple of years ago? Do you have those records? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Keith, but
I'll have to look for it.
sure. But, you know, he assured us that that had been done, and whether it had been done well, I don't know. Whether it had been done sufficiently, I don't know. But a lot of folks say, or we hear a lot, oh, the maintenance on my road is crap. Because frankly, everybody's road could be better maintained, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's not the case that there's been no work done. I just want you to know that. And you know, go
Like I
ahead.
said, I live down there and 365 days a year.
I understand.
I see what goes on, and there was, I'd say absolutely no maintenance last year. What brought all this to a head was last year in November or early December, right before deer hunting season, a group of people down there contacted the grader operator and asked if he'd come down and dress up the road a little bit so they could hunt deer down there and not have any problems with the road. He did that. Only he did a lousy job and he created some really bad spots in the road. When I contacted the county engineer's office, I was told at first the road grader was never there, which I saw it. And then I was told, well, yeah, he did go down there, but he didn't drop the blade. Yes, he did. The next day, there was another road grader back down there with a different operator straightening up the mess the kid made the day before. So, I mean,
So, I mean, are you saying then that one, what you call the mess, the road would be fine except for that mess?
no, it's gotten to the point since then where there's 4 or 5 really bad spots down there in the road. And a lot of it is because the ditches, the water can't drain off the road. The Nature Conservancy is partly responsible for that ditch problem. They had trees float out of there that they cut down, and they had some guy farming that ground down there one year, and he baled up the corn stalks. It flooded, and all those big round bales ended up in the middle of the road or along the downstream ditch and just filled it up. And it's never been cleaned out, and the drainage isn't there. I don't wanna take up any more of your
No,
time.
appreciate it.
No.
Thank you.
There was some discussion last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't remember which, about the possibility of getting some, stockpiling some rock there and moving it across that bridge a few ton at a time because the weight
That's how it was
restriction.
done the last time it was done.
Yeah,
Yeah, time of year is a challenge, you gotta wait for things to dry up. I mean, the reality is the 245th, the problem on 245th is the bridge.
right,
You know, we're being told by bridge inspectors that it's a $1.2 million bridge. And you can't, it's hard to justify $1.2 million for the properties.
Well,
it
we've
serves.
looked into other options with other counties that have areas like this. They've used old railroad flatbed cars or tanker cars. They cut the ends out of them, lay them in their culverts.
Yeah, I think the challenge with all of that is if you look at, you know, how we're designed to do road work and what's a greater way? How much is a greater way?
34,000.
Yeah, 14 tons. So any structure you put in there, if we're gonna go down there and grade, it's gotta support that.
Right.
We gotta haul rock, we have tandem axle trucks, right, so we're gonna haul probably 10, 11 ton at a time, 15 ton, something like that. So it restricts the county's ability to maintain, so, that bridge really is the kind of the Achilles heel here. And I think
And I
we have to
understand
come
that.
up with creative solutions to try to figure out what can we do to make that more serviceable, cause the engineer's office doesn't have a bunch of tonners. We don't have a lot of those trucks, we got big trucks, we typically, now we're line hauling with a side dump, right? And staging rock with a 53 footer instead of making all the little trips to just try to save money.
They're staging rock out there this morning on the east side of McCune Bridge.
Yeah, we do that when the weather, when weather gets decent, we get on the roads, we can move it quicker. So it's a bit of a challenge, but I think that we're committed to looking at it and figuring it out. And the engineer, we've been talking with the engineer, and there are a whole, a Class B road, you heard that, Class B roads are an option. Special assessment districts are an option. There's all kinds of options, and I think you have to weigh them all and then decide what's the best option. And that's, I think, where we are, is trying to get that put together, so, spring is never a great time on any road, so I think.
When we first moved down there, I believe the weight limit on that bridge was 22 ton.
Yeah,
And it's 10 ton now.
yeah.
And
I wouldn't take a 10 ton on that bridge.
that bridge needs to be on the show marvels of engineering, because whoever designed and built that bridge and the forces of nature with it has withstood is amazing to us that live down there and travel it every day. I boated across that bridge when all you could see was this tonnage sign underwater going like this.
Yeah, I don't know.
And the water goes down, the bridge is still there, and we go on about our business. That's all I have to say.
I appreciate it, Chuck, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else wanna address the board?
Matt Storm, 507 Burlington Street in Conesville. I think pretty much everything that I wanted to cover was kind of covered by Chuck or my emails. I'm kind of incessantly bothered you guys with emails and whatnot and stuff.
No
But
bother.
really, just kind of wanted to say thanks for listening to all the kind of what we're bringing up and stuff. I know it is it's a challenge, right? I mean, like I said, I've done city government and we've had the unfunded mandates, and it's hard to spread a little bit of money to a lot of different people. And I get where you guys are coming from, but I also kind of echo some of the things that Chuck had said. And it is a level A road, right? So, and again, I know kind of bristle up a little bit about whether it should be a B or an A or whatnot, but at this point in time, it is a level A. And I know that you said that some material has been given to that road. I'm not here to say it has or hasn't, but from my optics, it doesn't look like much has been there. And again, I'm not calling anybody not true or this or that. We could take a 5-gallon bucket across there and say, yep, we put some rock there, right? So again, the road is in the condition it is in right now because not much material has been put on that road and it's not been shaped to put, like Chuck had said, to get the water off of the road a little bit. That's my opinion. I'm not an engineer. But there are plenty of different places throughout the county that has a shaped road, the water goes off the road and it does fine. They're in low level areas. I mean, like I said, I referred to Loiza County. They run right through a marsh, directly through a marsh. And that road's great all the time, right? And maybe it doesn't get exposed to the flood water or this or that, but I guess really where I'm getting at without getting off on too much of a tangent here, guys, is we really just want to try to work together on this thing. The unfortunate part from, again, my optics is it seems like since we brought this to the board and started asking stuff, it seems like we start getting more like, hey, we're gonna change the road to a B, or we're gonna, I mean, we've even heard some things like we'll shut the road altogether, or like those are some of the things I was talking about as far as trying to be cooperative and transparent and just trying to keep a good optimistic approach to this thing. That makes it really tough to try to maintain that from our perspective too. I don't want us against you guys kind of thing. I mean, Santos, I really appreciate you've reached out a lot with communication on some of that stuff, so I appreciate it. But I guess that's all I wanted to say, just kinda echo some of that stuff. I mean, I'm not saying anything that we haven't talked about for the last couple of months, but just kinda wanna put a face to the emails and address you guys.
Well, Matt, I know I'm the one who probably brought up Class B, and
Sure.
the reason I did, and I think I put this in my email back to you, is we got to consider everything. I mean, every single option's got to be on the table, and I don't think it would be very smart of any of us to rule out an option without even looking at it. So that's why I'm not saying I'm for Class B. I will tell you, as I'm sure you know, we're a county that's uniquely situated geographically with two major rivers going through it. Excuse me. I use this only for lack of a better term. Well, I'm not going to use the term, but basically we have a lot of roads like this that serve a relatively low densely populated area,
Sure.
or that don't serve much of a populated area at all. And you know, from day one I came on the board, one of my priorities has been to look at these. It doesn't mean closing them all down, but which ones do we need? Which ones can we afford? Because you know, so I will assure you that I've been looking at these roads since before this issue came up. Not necessarily yours in particular, but the idea of it.
Sure.
Because I tend to think we've got more roads than we can probably afford, especially as things get more expensive.
Yeah.
And that's not a desire to shut anyone down. That's a desire to serve the most people that we can.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just telling you that whatever decision I make, whatever decision these guys make, you're not going to love it, first of all, because
I
no
get
one's
it.
going to be super happy. But I can't promise you that it's going to be anything approaching what you might like. But I do promise everybody I take these things extremely seriously and make the best decision I possibly can with what I think the priorities of the counties are. So that's what I'll say. You know,
Fair enough.
we are here to work with you. We do want to work with you. We just got to figure out what we can do.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
My biggest concern is the long game on this, and I've thought about this for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the long game on it is, as Jeff brought up, and it's the bridge. You know, as representatives of the taxpayers, just to look at spending 7 digits
Sure.
left of the decimal on a new bridge there, that's tough to swallow.
I get it. That's why
So-
why we've been pursuing other
You
Yeah,
know,
no, absolutely.
cost-effective.
the aspect on my behalf to be able to take and transport some rock at a point in time when the elements and Mother Nature is conducive, I don't have a problem with that at all. But there again, it's because of the weight of the bridge and the weight of the grader. I mean, you can't run a grader across there to grade that, or am I mistaken?
We
I
have.
mean, you got a 10,
It's a
let's
10-ton
just
bridge
put,
and
if you're looking for a
214.
volunteer to drive it, it won't be me.
Right. That's right. And I get it. Right? It's a sticky situation. I understand.
You know what I mean? And so that, the idea of being able to haul some rock, this is just my own opinion, the idea of being able to haul some rock over there, onto that, that's a doable thing. But anything past that, I'm not quite sure how that's gonna be approached.
Sure.
I'm just being honest with you. I'm not sure how you're gonna grade that, other than with maybe a skidder or something with a blade. You know, tractor and a blade or a skid steer, but when that day comes, that that bridge is deemed to be impassable,
Yeah, it's coming.
and it's coming, you know, so I don't know what that answer is gonna be for, you know, these folks like, you guys, Chuck, live there?
Suppose you come out and condemn the bridge, I mean, what do you do with us?
I don't have that answer. I don't have that answer. That's what I'm talking about, the long game here,
Yeah.
you know? So, but I'm just talking my own position. I don't have any problem
No, it's fair
moving some
discussion.
rock down
It's,
there.
it's crossed my
you know,
mind as well. I get it.
in small amounts, but I don't know how you're gonna grade it, other than with a skidder or blade, like I say. And, I certainly, don't see any thing in the future of ditch cleaning in that bottom, I can assure you of that. And then the life of that bridge, so, that's my position on it.
Okay.
I don't know where that's going.
Fair enough.
And it might be more years away than you think.
Well, I mean, we've had a lot of those questions ourselves too. I mean, is the reason that the bridge is as low of tonnage as it is because it hasn't had maintenance? Is it because of the pilings? I mean, it's just the pilings.
Yeah, the pilings
Good
are
answer.
rotted in it, am I correct?
The piling, Doug does not recall doing anything with pilings, so God only knows how old they are. It's timber. 40 years is a major life for a timber bridge.
In
This
water,
thing's
yeah.
over 40 years old. The rebuild is over 40.
Yeah, the question just that
The
came up
pi-
was
the
like,
piling is the question.
Yeah.
and that was the question, was like, train bridges go over wood, so that was some of the questions, and I'm not questioning whether they're rotted or not, but this little bit of talk helps a lot of wood, and people say, what about trains, or, you know, they go over wood, and is it the pilings, or is it the deck, or is it what, so that's really good.
The pilings, yeah.
Yeah, and my comments are all based on that long game too, you know, like Scott, if there were an easy way to get that rock over there, that's not a huge deal, but yeah, it's, you can't take 100 truckloads of rock for any length of time economically,
Sure.
you know, or responsibly, I mean, it's a crappy situation.
It is.
All right,
Appreciate your time, guys.
thank you for your comments, folks, I appreciate that.
Hey, Scott, I just wanna address a couple things from a land use perspective, based on some things I heard
Okay.
today about that area. You had asked, you know, how many people am I aware of that lives there, and I told you I didn't really know, I just had to take this gentleman at his word that there's one full-time resident, but I did want to address a comment that was being made about people having the intent of moving down there, you know, upon retirement or something. Just so you're all aware and have a clear understanding of zoning, those parcels are all zoned A1 agricultural. As such, there's only two ways that a person can construct or establish full-time residency in a dwelling in the A1 district. One is to be farm exempt. I don't see any, you know, economy producing farms in that area. So I think we can take farm exemption off the table, which leaves a special use permit for a rural residence that involves the Board of Adjustment, considering that request for a full-time dwelling in that area. I just want everybody to kind of understand that that's not my decision, it's the Board of Adjustments. However, based on the criteria that's laid out in the rural residence ordinance, the things that they look at and weigh, it's highly unlikely that they would ever issue a special use permit for a rural residence in those areas. Chief, you know, among the concerns would be accessibility. We have a road that does seasonally, although the last year and so far this year hasn't gone underwater. Historically, we can establish that road is in the floodplain. They've not, in my time here, ever issued a special use permit for a full-time dwelling in the floodplain. It just doesn't make sense. A special use permit for rural residences are areas of the county that we look at that have low farming value that may be ideal for full-time residency.
What about FEMA buyout plans, is there anything
So,
available?
if they have lived there for that many years and it is their full-time residence, it is possible that it is a candidate for a FEMA.
I'm not saying that's what you want to do,
Right.
just thinking of everything.
Because seasonal recreational cottages are not eligible for FEMA buyouts. Now, property owners that have seasonal recreational cottages, if there's other funding sources available that don't have those FEMA restrictions, possibly, but only full-time dwellings that are recognized by the county as full-time dwellings are even eligible for consideration.
We received FEMA assistance in 2008.
And that is separate from the hazard mitigation acquisition program. Cabin owners in 2008 up and down the Cedar River got immediate disaster recovery funds, but
The requirement was being a resident.
Yep.
the requirement, yeah, and there were people that got immediate FEMA disaster assistance. All they had to do was tell FEMA that was their home and they got some initial funds. To get acquisition money to buy those properties out, the county would have to agree that those are full-time dwellings. And so there were people that told FEMA that's where they lived, and they may have in fact been living there. But I would say that some of them that got FEMA funds that said that it was their dwelling weren't living there legally according to county zoning. So they could get immediate disaster assist help with cleanup or maybe some minor repairs, but acquisition, the county would have to acknowledge and agree that those were full-time.
So our seasonal
And we
dwell-
did
I'm
buy
sorry.
out a
And we
number,
did
we
buy
would
out
buy
some
out.
after 2008 in that several.
Seven of them
Yeah.
bought out.
Yeah.
More.
Cause I see we own some parcels down
Yes.
there.
Those
Yeah.
were all FEMA buyouts.
And that's all private property, this is not core leased land?
No, those are privately, individually owned parcels of land. They have their own platted lots that
Yep.
they own
And
whatever
the
the
county
description
does
is.
own lots down there.
Yes,
Yeah.
the ones that we bought out after the 2008 flood. I just want everybody to understand, after hearing that there was people that were maybe considering relocating there and establishing full-time residency, that is highly unlikely that would happen or be allowed to occur.
So how does it work with special assessment districts? And maybe that's not a question for you, maybe that's for Jim.
Yeah, that's not in my wheelhouse.
But basically, it's in my understanding, that's pretty much analogous to like a drainage district. The residents would get together and elect a body that would levy a special tax.
This
to
is the same
maintain the
issue we
road.
ran into in Montpelier, when they were concerned with the quality of road maintenance in Montpelier. We said, well, we maintain a county, they're a county road, and they maintain a county road standard. And if you desire something more, one alternative would be to create a special assessment district for using for road, additional road. Now, we're not really a municipal road, we don't have, our trucks aren't designed to run around a town and plow roads either. That's a different kind of equipment you want, so we never really pursued much further there, but that was it was something that came up, we have these areas, we have 4 or 5 areas like this, Hinkyville, Hinkyville and 152nd, and Montpelier, the river along Montpelier, up there where we have issues like this and have over the years, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge to try to maintain a level of service that people expect and want, for how we're designed to operate. Let's put it that way.
Well,
Counties are struggling with this everywhere. I just had a conversation with Scott County Supervisor about the very thing, where they have subdivisions that have cropped up in the county, and they want the county to take over maintenance of those subdivisions, and that's not what county road departments do. It's, if your expectations are to be like living in a city, then move into a city, because they tax for that, they have the equipment and the staffs to do it. We're set up to maintain gravel roads, that's what we do. It's a different world and a whole different cost base, so it's a challenge.
Good conversation.
Well, with the new tax increase, you guys might be able to cover some of it.
That's in the city.
Keith?
I just wanna give a little input on that.
okay.
Just in general, for the people, the county to know, and Mr. Check, our department, we didn't ask for a penny more in taxes, property taxes, nor did we receive a penny more. And many years, we've not asked for nor received a penny more, so any tax increases are not going to secondary roads, so there's no extra property tax dollars coming to do any of this.
Thank you for that input.
Sure.
Yeah, your primary funds come from local option sales tax dollars.
As far as, I'll go back.
You get about 8% of county property tax dollars go to roads, correct?
Right, most people think every penny of it goes to roads, but it's a much lower number, and it's a subset of even the rural levy, and very little paid by, for years and years when I was here, the cities paid zero, cause the board did not tax them any. They're only allowed 16 7/8 cents on the city, which we don't quite do that, but we do get some off the cities now, a small amount. But yeah, our source, we do get some federal dollars, not a lot. We get money from which pay at the pump, which is not a percentage, it's a fixed rate. If it had ever been a percentage tax once upon a time, we'd be looking good with the price of fuel, but as it is, we don't get a penny more there. So that's road use tax that comes to us. which is our single biggest source. And then local option and property tax, and occasionally grants that we apply for, but those are our sources of funds. And we try to spend what we take in, and if we couldn't do that, then we would ask them to lower what they give us. That's the way we pretty well try to be balanced with them.
Well, it's been my findings with my time sitting on this board for 10 years that the majority of the residents that I talk to, if you ask them where most of their tax dollars go, the response almost every time is that it goes to roads.
Yeah.
Which is completely untrue.
Completely.
And the truth of the matter is that the majority of the tax dollars go to schools. And people are just uninformed in that regard of where the majority of your tax dollars go.
Both state income and property tax.
Correct.
Local property tax.
Correct. So,
As a for instance, and I haven't done the math with the increase, but what goes to roads is that my piece of it might change if my assessment changed, and Doug's assessment goes down, he maybe contributes less, but I live in the county, I don't live on a county road, I live on a private road, and I contribute about $100 a year of my taxes to roads, which, if the county took that road into the system, would not pay for the services, so, it just doesn't cover it. And I know the one gentleman spoke about, more in parts of Canada and more elsewhere. That's true. The trucks going by on the interstate help us out. The poorer counties, they really help out because of the fuel tax that they pay. So the wealth does get spread around a little bit. The real fact is there's not enough to go around to fix everything.
well, and no matter how much there is, the wants are always bigger. Always bigger. Anyone else like to speak to the board from the public today? Seeing no one come forward, it is 10:17, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.